Hello. Hi, I'm Jim Crossman.
Jim Crossman.
Hi, Patricia.
How are you?
Good.
Awesome. We're both early. I would love to have a conversation with you just to catch up because I feel like I talked to you 2 years ago. You had sent in the request, and we went through the process again. Hi.
Hi.
And so I wanted to check in with you and okay, what's next? Because I know you had
Yeah, I'm wondering how is it that I get to talk to anybody at Excel and say, all right, I want to do this program.
Yeah, so that is what today I want Mark from Dietz and Davis to talk about, because I think I actually need to send, because I think last time we didn't coordinate once the agreements went through, then Excel connected with some and then worked it all out, and some didn't, like yours, I think. So I'm gonna reach out to them. I had talked to Mark about it, and say, Mark Schoenheider from Excel, do you want to reach out to our list and work with them, or do you want them to contact you? How do we work on these programs?
Okay.
And some of them did it worked out really well for, like, Stacy Lambert from I want to say Douglas, but that's not it. Who did the cellular blinds, and they had to afterwards come up with the rebate amount and program and marketing and all that kind of stuff. So
what's the fellow's name at Excel?
Mark Schoenheider. It's like Schoeneider, something like that. But I can connect you to him.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, that was one of my objectives, is try to figure out how, who to talk to and how do you get it
started. Like, great. They said, we like this, we accept it. And you're like, well, now what? Right. What does that mean? So yeah, that's what's next. So great. Hey, Sam.
All right. Thank you.
Absolutely. So anyway, that's on my list to figure out that follow-up piece as well.
Okay.
And be more proactive in connecting everyone, I think, than we have in the past. So
awesome.
Great. Sam and Robert, you guys are the early birds with us. Looks like I have to unmute. Yeah, Robert, I don't know if you asked to be unmuted or not, but it said unmute, so I did. You can remute. You can remute.
No. I'll mute myself.
Right. No worries. I think there's 20-something people that RSVP'd or 25. So we'll wait for everyone. Hey, Sam.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. And did you guys, just curious, I'd have to look back at the list. I think some of you did attend the quarterly membership meeting in December.
Yes.
Okay, great.
I did not.
Yes.
I'm gonna pull and compare the list of who attended the quarterly membership meetings versus the PAC meetings and see how much overlap there is. But I put an agenda together. I'll put it up on the screen, but I put the links to all the presentations at the quarterly membership meeting with all the detailed slides of the results from the Excel DSM, the legislative proposals and that type of thing. So in case somebody missed the meeting, you can always go to our membership go to our website, the membership only section, and you can pull those up. You can link on those presentations, but I just put them in the agenda to make it easy for people. So when I send it out after the meeting, you'll have it. Hey, Mike.
Hi, Patricia. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Happy New Year, everyone.
I know, right?
Yeah. Off to a ruckus start.
Well, it's a good thing we're all here. So,
Better than the alternative, right?
right.
I've got one Christmas cookie left on my desk. I'm making
Oh,
my way through all the goodies.
so you're waiting for Valentine's Day for the next set of cookies?
Right. I can start my resolution now as soon as this last cookie's over, and I can start losing some weight.
Yeah, that's how it works, right? I've gotten through my stash. Yeah, it's funny. Hey, Hannah. Hannah.
Hey guys.
So,
You.
Hi.
We're just waiting for people. We have like 25 so people that RSVP.
Perfect. Happy New Year.
You too. Yeah, we're all glad to be here.
Yes, so true.
You know, it's feeling pretty old already. It didn't take long.
Just so you know, my 84-year-old mother, I think, I don't know, 5 years ago, I was like, gosh, every year it just seems like it goes faster and faster. She's like, yeah, because you're getting older and older. That's what happens.
Thanks, Mom.
I'm like, well, all right, great.
Unfortunately, she's right. Every year is less of your life.
I know, right? Yeah.
Compare that to my 5-year-old who's I was like 9 months until first grade. And he's like, 9 months, that's forever.
Oh. So cute.
Okay, I have to tell another one really quick. So I have a friend and her 5-year-old nephew was with us. And I don't know what we were talking about. And he's super pensive and a thinker. And he like leans forward and he's like, Aunt Joni, he said, what am I doing with my life? I'm not doing anything with my life. It was totally hilarious. Like we were like, how did you even come up with it? I'm not doing anything. Like listening to us, it was,
That's adorable.
with my life. You're 5.
You're 5. So cute.
that is funny.
Yeah. Let's give a little bit more, 2 minutes after. I was saying earlier that anyone who did not attend the quarterly membership meeting on December 17th, where we had full presentations from Mark Detsky on the DSM, where we're at on the outcomes with Excel, and then also Howard from SWEEP gave a detailed overview of the potential legislation. And so this meeting, we're not going to dive into the super details on that. And we're going to talk about what's next going forward. But I did create an agenda that I'll share with everyone when we get started. And in that, I included links. We recorded those presentations so that if you wanted to, at your leisure, listen to it while you're making dinner, you're more than welcome to. Just so you know, that will be in the document that I'm going to send out afterwards with the agenda from our discussion. And I'm wondering, we should get started. We have a good group. I'll give you 1 more minute and we'll get started. So I'll just explain that one more time for the other people who've just jumped on. We're just waiting another minute for everyone. But the agenda that I'll be sharing on my screen, I included links to the presentations at the quarterly membership meeting on December 17th, where we had an in-depth presentations from Dietz and Davis and from Casey and from Mark, and then also from Howard from SWEEP and the legislation coming. So we're not going to go into all that detail. And we want to look at, okay, what do we need to do going forward? We've not shared the wins with the entire EEBC yet, and we'll be doing that today. So that'll be the first time that everybody's seeing that, except for the all the members that were actual interveners that put proposals in. So just know that you'll be getting those links in the agenda. You can always go to our website, to the members only section, and the members can go in and pull any link to any presentation that has been at a quarterly membership meeting. And then also some from our PAC meetings and whatnot. So that is always available to you, just so you know. I think with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. I see Mark, you're on. I see Casey, and I know Howard was going to be a couple minutes late coming in. So I would say, let's get started. So welcome everyone. Looking forward to the new year. I think feel like they're grateful for a lot of blessings. I think that we have one simple one is that that as a part of COVID, construction industry is in the top 10 essential industries, by the way, in Colorado. So, and energy efficiency and beneficial electrification and the energy transition is moving forward. And there's a lot of work for us to do, and super exciting where we ended up with Excel as well. So I am going to share my screen with the agenda up. There we go. So a couple of just housekeeping items. I included in here are dates for quarterly membership meetings for next year. And also the link where I said we have a link to the speaker panel that we had, which, by the way, after our meeting on December 17th, I got about 5 emails that said it was one of the best. Surprisingly, in the 10 years of our presentations, that everybody really, really liked it. So it's interesting, and a lot of perspectives were brought in on where energy efficiency fits into the future of beneficial electrification and the trends that are happening. So that's on there, as well as the PowerPoint presentations and the segments that I mentioned from Dietz and Davis and from SWEEP. And the other item that you may have seen when you registered is that we have a small survey, and it's 4 questions. And if you haven't taken it, when you get the agenda after this meeting, please take the survey. It's 4 quick questions. We want to know what you'd like to see in 2021 from EEBC. We have, suggestions, of course, the beneficial electrification legislation, workforce education, especially in the heat pump side, transitioning businesses, and then suggestions for topics will be in there. And then Carmen at the end might talk a little bit about our Policy Action Committee. I'm looking for a co-chair here going forward. So anything else you want to comment on that, Carmen? Carmen is our Policy Action Committee chairman, who's been fantastic this last year, partner in crime with me.
I think I'll save it to the end, like we had in the agenda.
Okay, great. So to kick off, then we're going to do the regulatory update, and starting with the Xcel Energy PSCo's 2021 to 2022 DSM plan settlement proceeding. And I think Mark and Casey are on to talk about that. And
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Well, hello. I hope everyone's having a nice afternoon. My name is Casey. Canelio. I work with the law firm Dietz and Davis along with Mark Detsky, and we have been representing Eebc in the Xcel Energy DSM plan that the proceeding is slowly coming to a close. At this point, the settlement agreement, which includes a lot of wins from proposals from Eebc members, is under the review of the administrative law judge that is presiding over the proceeding. And there is a one-day settlement hearing set later this month for the ALJ to ask any questions that they may have of the parties. And then we anticipate that the ALJ will approve the plan as outlined in the settlement agreement, and sometime later this winter once that hearing wraps up. And so I'd be happy to go through that wins table for all the Eebc member submissions, or give more of an overview on the proceeding itself. Patricia, how would you like me to discuss that?
Do the highlights on the proceeding first, and then we'll dive into the wins. That'd be awesome.
Okay, great. So Eebc, we gave our first settlement position letter, which included 16 different separate proposals to PSCO in October. And then we had been engaged in settlement discussions, both with the company one-on-one. We had a couple meetings with Xcel and Eebc individually, and we also had some settlement meetings with Boulder, Denver, Western Resource Advocates, and SWEEP. And it turns out that a lot of our positions that we put forth in that letter, which are documented on the agenda in those in that table, there was a lot of alignment with some of these other parties. And so I think that was really helpful in finding common ground with some of the other interveners and getting Xcel to accept our proposals and to work with them a little bit as the settlement negotiations continued into November. So Eebc, we joined the settlement agreement in November. It was joined by every party except for one, but it was an unopposed settlement agreement. And so it included a lot of wins on these membership proposals that we put forth in our settlement negotiations with the company. And the budgets were adjusted slightly with the settlement agreement. So the settlement budgets is actually a $90 million budget on the electric side for 2021 and 18.5 million on the gas side. And that is actually the same for 2022. And both of these goals exceed the commission targets that were set in a previous docket. So it is an exciting time for Xcel and DSM, and this plan is definitely robust and we'll be excited for once it gets implemented. And so, yeah, I'd be happy to go into the wins column and discuss those proposals a little bit more in depth if that's where we want to go next.
Yeah. And Mark, you might want to comment on this too. I was thinking of a couple key high-level things that we saw kind of trending with the group in terms of, what were in a lot of the proposals, and of course, the beneficial electrification, heat pump technologies, and were, part of the key, the majority of the discussions and requests. However, Mike Schoenharder, I think, in the last call that we had said to put in perspective that Xcel is dipping their toe in the waters, and they've increased the beneficial electrification DSM rebates and the heat pump side especially, and that to still keep in mind, it's still, correct me if I'm wrong, like 10% of the entire budget, although there was, felt like 75% of the focus was on those, on those types of proposals. And then it seemed like they were really looking to, they're moving forward with this. And I got the impression that there's a lot more opportunity for discussion in the next 2 years before the next plan coming into 2024, 25. instead of waiting. 2 years. Things are happening so fast. That was my impression of it. And I don't know if Casey or anybody else wants to comment on that. Is that accurate? That was my perception.
Yeah, I think it is accurate. When you think about the $100 million, $90 million annual budget and how much the parties were really playing at the edges of that during the process, that, you know, the first of all, just to back up 1 second, the authorized budget for the PUC was $78 million with a flexible aspect of it where Excel could increase up to $93 million and still get their presumption that their spending was prudent. So what they did was that 78 million all was, you know, baked into all of the budgets for the products that have been we've known for years and we're tweaking with, and that they've consistently come under. And then you had this extra component of the, as you say, like the toe dipping, you know, I don't have the number at the tip of my fingers right here, but 10% sounds like you're in the right ballpark. And you have a lot of pressure coming from environmental groups, especially, to move beneficial electrification quicker at this point. And that's where a lot of the movement was on that side. And our proposals are mostly aimed at the technical side of that and the industry and customer acceptance side of that. And we had success in both of those areas, and we were able to sort of draft behind, if you will, the push of the enviros to generally increase the budgets and the products. And from the very beginning, our message to the parties was, you can't do this without industry support and education from the get-go, because we don't have that robust industry support for beneficial electrification now. And that was one of the key areas we were successful in. And so although it was not a big part of the budget, you know, it's expected to grow as time goes on. And there are some parties, like I think Denver and some others in this docket, who are pushing to get rid of the gas program altogether.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would say a comment from that on the get rid of the gas program immediately. Actually, Excel had said, well, I had hoped Eebc had jumped in about where the market was on that kind of a request in one of the meetings. And I think that Excel appreciates, this is some of the conversation from them, the Eebc's business perspective and true industry accuracy that we bring to the conversation. And, you know, especially I think from the heat pump manufacturers, their participation and having the direct conversation. I think that they have been doing a lot of research, and they needed to hear directly from the manufacturers to confirm directionally where things were going and where the technology is in Colorado in a cold climate, cold weather climate. So that's some other things that came clear, that I think that's why we get so many of our proposals are accepted, is because they value our voice and the entire group, because we're not environmental voice, right? We're just the businesses saying, this is what we do, this is how we implement your rebates in the marketplace.
Yeah, and you also saw that in the calls we had with Excel's team,
Mm-hmm.
where we could really, you know, talk turkey with them on the technical details between different units and different approaches, and so that's that level of detail Excel really appreciates at this point in our relationship with them.
Yeah, I agree.
If I may, Patricia, I was just going to chime in a little here too.
Hi, Howard.
That was a good partnership to work together with the Eebc on lots of aspects of this plan, but beneficial electrification was a key portion of it. We moved Excel from, I'd say, a couple of toes in the water. They proposed $500,000 per year was their starting proposal, and we doubled that to $1 million per year. So maybe we now have 5 toes in the water. And as others were saying, I think we did a lot to increase the scope and make it a richer program, adding contractor incentives, adding cold climate heat pumps, which had been left out of the original proposal. They were only looking at heat pumps and dual fuel systems, and so forth. So I think that was definitely a significant improvement. That funding is parked within the gas DSM budget, just in case folks don't realize that. And they'll be counting the gas savings from replacing the furnaces and water heaters with heat pumps and heat pump water heaters to their gas savings targets. And there's one other thing I was going to say. Oh yes, Denver was very supportive of the heat pump portion of the gas budget. They were interested in eliminating rebates for high efficiency gas furnaces and water heaters, not home weatherization, insulation, and air sealing, and not the electrification portion of the budget. But there was some discussion and decision, kind of a consensus among other parties that might be going a little bit too far in this plan to cut out all support for higher efficiency furnaces and water heaters. But that may be a direction that we end up going here, I think, and we're likely to see that proposal in the future, and potentially with support from Excel in the future.
Great points.
Tricia, hey, this is Robert.
Go ahead.
With Excel, I know we've got this plan, and this is going to be for 2021 through 2023.
22.
In that time frame, or 2022. So in that time frame, for the areas that we did not get wins, is there opportunities for education and training of the Excel team to maybe better understand some of the things that why they rejected some of the other proposals, so that maybe those can have more bearing on the next DSM cycle?
Yes, this is Mark, and there's most of the ideas that Excel did not accept, which are not many, but they are ones that in our conversations with them, they had dangling questions that we couldn't answer at the time, or they hadn't seen a way to justify deemed savings so that it could be a sort of a prescriptive measure and not a custom measure. And those are the key areas. I mean, if I could just generalize, those are the ones that rise most to mind, is that where Excel was asking questions the most and ultimately did not go with certain of our recommendations, is where they couldn't or we couldn't give them what they considered to be the threshold they needed to make it a prescriptive measure within a program, or they just had questions on the technology and whether or not it would work in Colorado.
But to your
Okay, and then
broader question, sorry, I would just note, Patricia and I have been talking about how we want to kind of foster more communication with Excel in the interim between these proceedings, because it ends up happening kind of in a pressure cooker. And that's not always the best way to get your ideas conveyed. So even for the things that there's going to be a lot of follow-up conversations to get to implementation stage, see how they get implemented, et cetera. But I'd say for the ones that did not get accepted, like Mark said, there's sometimes some explicit reasons, outstanding kind of data needs or research questions that might be out there that could make it viable in the future. So that, there are the regular DSM quarterly meetings, I think they are. So that's one venue, but we're thinking even to reach out to Mark to see if we can have kind of staff level conversations about what's going on in the industry to leverage that positive feedback we got on our kind of expertise and industry knowledge that they seem to value.
Okay, and a follow-up question is, at what point in the process does or can Xcel Energy provide call it input, or what their wish list would be, so that industry and others can be able to provide sufficient information to be able to either justify or show that it's not a good step to go ahead and take?
I don't have the short answer to that, Rob, but I think it lands somewhere from the approval of the plan to the start of the next plan to give a really wide time frame. But I think we need to hone in on that in conversations with Excel about what the right timing is for that.
Yeah, and there's
Okay,
also,
thanks.
and Robert, also there is the roundtables, they have their quarterly roundtables, which, by the way, Eebc was, and I think Sweep was too, was a main part of getting those roundtables set up, because there was too much time in between in those 2 years to do exactly what you just said. And so that forum is supposed to be those roundtables on a quarterly basis, which means that, in person, you'd be in person in the past and would be able to raise those kind of questions and bring those things up in the roundtable. However, I feel like a lot of times it turns out to be a presentation from Excel where we ask questions versus putting those things forward. And I think that is a part of what Carmen mentioned earlier about how do we foster more communication between, do we sync up a meeting with those roundtables, or do something else? And that's what we're looking at. So right now that roundtable is, and then the other companies will socialize their ideas with different employees at Excel, but that doesn't mean that employee is going to be a part of the DSM process. And I think there's a big disconnect that I think people think, oh, well, I've talked to 5 different departments and they like my idea. But if it doesn't get put into, if they don't accept it in between the plan, and then your last opportunity is to put your idea forward in the DSM process, then you miss, you want to, like you said, do more beforehand, but the DSM process is that they're legally required to review and make decisions. Is that helpful?
Yes and no.
It's not a great system, but that's where I think it's at.
Yeah.
And
At
Mark,
those quarterly meetings, they always talk about the kind of new, what they call products, these sort of sub-programs. They talk about the new products that they're analyzing and give an update on how they're looking and the prospects for bringing them forward, which can be outside of the plans. There's a way for them to propose modifications. They propose a lot of modifications to approved programs, and they can even add new programs. They have to stay within the budget caps, but sometimes there's pilot programs that they're adding as they're implementing one of their plans, and that we get a heads up about what's coming through those quarterly roundtable meetings. The materials are become public documents and they're posted on Excel has a DSM webpage with all their plans and all the materials from these quarterly meetings. So if you can't make the meetings, you can review them on that website.
Well, then one of the possible formats moving forward on those quarterly meetings is that maybe it can be a kind of an every other one that that maybe Excel kind of has a first one and gives an update on the new products that they're looking at or analyzing, and that maybe then they ask some questions that they would like to get more information on, and then maybe the next quarterly meeting there can be presentations done by industry kind of answering those questions and providing information, and kind of that back and forth education training process. So by the time the 2 years rolls around, there have been 4 back and forth opportunities to ask and answer questions and provide information, and that maybe then that next step of the DSM plan becomes much easier because there's been that back and forth communication for the previous 2 years.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I don't know, Howard, from the piloting process, that should be happening in the piloting process. And
Yeah.
that's one of the things that the EBC has asked, that we create maybe a fast track, a way to do a pre-review of a product or an idea,
Yep.
that they get an answer within a month. And then you go into providing all the data and the information, like, is this feasible? Is it something that would work? So we've had some ideas, but they really haven't been fleshed out enough on how do you create some kind of fast tracking rapid response in that piloting
Yeah.
process, or, like you're saying, Robert, like bring it into the, the roundtable somehow. That's maybe something we should,
Yeah.
putting that down to think about.
I would also say, I think if, they're talking about some new product and there's, still a bunch of questions, and EEBC really thinks they could bring a lot of good information to the table and be helpful. I think Excel would be open to a separate follow-up meeting. They're pretty open to meeting at any time. They have a lot of staff. There's a lot of, compared to some other utilities that are light on staff that are, very extremely busy. Excel does a lot in-house, and therefore they have, different people, a whole host of people that are leads in different areas, and they're pretty easy to talk to and meet with.
Great. Thanks, Robert. Any other questions, anyone? All right. Casey, do you want to dive into the list of the measures and the rebates?
Yes, I would love to. Okay. So going into a little bit more detail on the 16 different EEBC proposals and different product measures that we submitted to the company over the course of the settlement negotiations this fall. They're in no particular order, but starting with the first one, we had pushed Excel for adopting standardized rebates for commercial heat pumps. And this was put forth by both EEBC, SWEEP, Belco, and NTC. And this is one of the conversations we had in our individual meeting with PSCO, where we got a little bit more feedback on why they weren't as willing to adopt this proposal. And so They have agreed to continue to support commercial heat pumps as part of the custom efficiency product, and we'll continue to gather data on these projects and report on the cost effectiveness at an upcoming quarterly DSM roundtable to potentially evaluate the potential for developing prescriptive rebates for these measures. But this is one where, going back to Mark's comment, where the cost effectiveness came into play. So this could be a potential avenue to lobby Excel in the quarterly roundtables to get this as a part of the next DSM plan to adopt the commercial heat pump standardized rebate. So that was not a win for us, but at least we got a little bit more information from the company on what we could do, or maybe more time that they need to evaluate this in terms of the cost effectiveness. So moving down to a win that Eebc put forth was that workforce training component of the plan, and something that Eebc would have liked to see in the original plan that they put forth in July for the conversion of technology to BE and HP, and to increase the education part of their plan to kind of provide for this more of an industry buy-in, as Eebc is offering their industry perspective in this proceeding. And we suggested a $100 rebate for contractors to complete either online or in-person training. And in response, Excel said that they will offer substantial market transformation and workforce training activities, and has committed $200,000 in product level market transformation for heat pumps. So that was a great win for Eebc on that.
Casey, before you go forward on both of these, I think one of the key things on the first one for those the commercial heat pumps to become a part of a prescriptive program, they asked specifically from the manufacturers to be gathering data for them, and to do that throughout the year, so that when it comes around again, that we'll be able to put a lot of data in front of them to turn into a prescriptive rebate. That's how I understood it. So I just want to make sure we call out, all the heat pump manufacturers and HVAC on the line that are doing heat pumps, that please task somebody with tracking those types of projects and jobs that you sell and install. And then I think on the workforce training, I'd like to see some type of working group to look at a lot of these things that are brewing in the marketplace for workforce development, especially transitioning, energy efficiency to heat pumps. And we've got a lot of companies that are doing energy efficiency, forced air, but heat pumps isn't even on the radar. So considering some type of group to work on what would workforce training be that we need, that our members, contractors, manufacturers, distributors, auditors, everyone says we need. That's all.
Thanks. That's really.
And that's why Carmen and Mark and Howard, and anybody else that would like to chime in of what that could look like. Yes, that's a good idea, or no, it's not, or we'd like to participate. Please send me a note afterwards. Go ahead, Casey.
Okay. Turning to the third recommendation that we put forth to the company was to increase the ductless, mini, and multi-split heat pump rebates from $300 to $600 with an additional incentive for contractors. And this was one that also a lot of other parties, including SWEEP, pushed for as well, and as an example of the common ground that we found with some of the other interveners in the proceeding. And so we were able to get some movement from the company on this, and they adopted an $800 rebate for ducted heat pumps and a $500 rebate for ductless heat pumps, in addition to a $100 contractor incentive. So that was a great win for Eebc in this proceeding. And I don't know if anyone else wants to chime in on this one, or I'll go to the next proposal. So this is one where, as Mark was saying, kind of into these technical requirements, we had requested an adjustment of the seasonal energy efficiency ratio, the SEER, which was at 13 to 14.99, and we had requested that for these standard AC and ASHP systems with quality install and changing that to 16 to 17 SEER, and also adjusting the energy requirements for high efficiency AC and ASHP systems from in the plan it's to at least 15 SEER, and then moving that up to the 17.1 SEER or 9.5 for HSPF for heat pumps. And this is one where we in one of our individual meetings with the company, we're able to provide a little bit more background to the company, but they were unfortunately unwilling to adjust these levels. And so they did not adopt Eebc's recommendation in the settlement agreement and for the amended plan based on the settlement agreement. So now moving to back to rebates, we had requested that the company eliminate the $300 standard efficiency AC with the QI rebate, and to also reduce the $500 high efficiency AC without QI rebate down to $300. And then we had also requested that the company adjust its high efficiency heat pump with QI rebate from $1,800 and $1,900. And this is another one where we're able to find common ground with some of the other parties, including SWEEP. And so PSCO agreed to lower that $300 incentive down to $200, and then also provide a $100 contractor incentive. And Excel, however, did not adjust the $500 high efficiency AC with QI rebate, but it did add a $50 contractor incentive. And I don't believe that those contractor incentives were a part of the original plan for these products. Could be wrong, but so that was a win in terms of getting a little bit more industry buy-in and Eebc providing the industry perspective and putting forth these recommendations. So moving down to the fifth recommendation, we had proposed an attic insulation standalone measure, offering an option for insulating to code starting at a 0 R value. And I believe this is one that we had tried, that Eebc put forth in the last DSM plan with PSCO. So this was kind of our second attempt to kind of get this into the new plan. And PSCO was not willing to adopt this as a standalone measure, but it did adjust its incentive of 30% of project costs from the $300 amount up to $400. So we considered this somewhat of a win to increase that, to adjust its incentive and move it upwards.
Hey, Casey, we had a question from Sean. Since it's not approved as a standalone measure, was it offered under, which program was it offered under? Do you remember?
I cannot speak to that, but I'm happy to look into that, or I don't know if Mark is able to.
I'm guessing it's probably the whole house retrofit or something like that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to look at that, follow up with you, Sean. But Mark, I don't know if you.
Yeah, I'd appreciate somebody. It doesn't move right now, but at some point in time, we're trying to educate our customer base. So the specifics would be very helpful. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, I'd be happy to look into that. Okay, so moving down to the next proposal that Eebc had in this settlement process, it was the creation of a free cooling product category within the AC chillers offering within the residential heating and cooling part of the plan. And this is another one where PSCO said they need a little bit more information, and that it's currently being evaluated under the custom product, and it will continue to gather data on the free cooling measure and periodically report on measure cost effectiveness during these DSM roundtables that will be starting up in 2021 for this new plan, with the goal to develop a prescriptive rebates for these measures when a reasonable expectation of cost effectiveness exists in the broad application of the measures. So we were able to bring this to the company, and now they're going to kind of take it under consideration and through the roundtable process, see if we can get this added to the plan or to the next plans in 2023. So moving down to our 8th recommendation, it was an AeroSeal HVAC duct sealing standalone product rebate. And this is another partial win where PSCO has said that they're going to evaluate a duct sealing rebate for a potential addition to the DSM plan through the 60-day notice process and discuss findings through the quarterly DSM roundtables. So, based on the feedback that we've gotten from PSCO on a lot of these offerings, we expect to play an active role in these quarterly roundtables and see how we can get these recommendations into the plan. One product or recommendation that was successful in being adopted into the plan was this concept of the one-stop EE shop or program, and it's energy audits for small businesses. And Excel has agreed to include audits and direct install measures into the small business energy services offering beginning in 2021. So that was adopted into the plan. The next recommendation that Eebc put forth was this addition of a variable refrigerant flow incentive to the plan's commercial HVAC and our multifamily and small business solutions programs. And similar to the free cooling product, this is something that is currently being evaluated under the custom product, and Excel has committed to continue to gather data on these VRF measures under the custom product, and then periodically report on the measures' cost effectiveness during these DSM roundtables beginning this year, with the goal to develop prescriptive rebates for these measures when the reasonable expectation of cost effectiveness exists in the broad application of the measures. So moving down to another technical requirement, we had requested removal of the 11 EER efficiency requirement for mini split heat pumps. And this is something that PSCO was unwilling to remove this requirement for MSHPs. And then,
oh, sorry, Casey, just add to that. Had a lot of discussion around this, and they talked about the 6 times a year this matters when they're at their max peak load. They're open to more data and information about that because it's prohibitive, my understanding, for the heat pump side. So that is just FYI. There is, I think they're open to the discussion, and I think there's some solutions discussed by the manufacturers to compensate for that, to remove it.
and I did see that we have a question about the free cooler and if it involves an evaporative cooler and how freeze protection is addressed. I'm not sure if anyone else on the meeting can answer that, but I'd also be happy to look into the specifics of that along with that attic rebate and follow up with you, Chuck. Great. Well, moving on to the next recommendation that Eebc had in this proceeding. We had requested expansion of the rebate program to include variable speed and multi-split heat pump systems, in addition to the currently captured mini split heat pumps and multi-head mini split heat pump systems. And PSCO had agreed to allow variable speed multi-split systems to participate within the residential heating, ventilation, and air conditioning product subject to standard qualifying efficiency standards. So we considered that a win in our offering this recommendation to the company and in getting this into the settlement agreement. And then moving down, we had requested use of manufacturer-specific smart thermostats or equipment rated in accordance with AHRI standard 1380 as an alternative to the Energy Star connected thermostats. And in our discussions with PSCo leading up to the settlement agreement, we got to hear a little bit more background on why these had not been included in the plan, and PSCo, as a part of the settlement, has agreed to work with smart thermostat manufacturers to identify additional products compatible with the DR portfolio and to be eligible for inclusion in DSM offerings. So this is something that, again, we can continue to work with the company and try to get some more explicit movement from them in using these other smart thermostats as an alternative to Energy Star. So moving down, we also requested the creation of a new rebate category for ASHPs paired with a natural gas furnace and supplemental heat, with 2 tiers aligning with the efficiency requirements for heat pumps and gas furnaces as already proposed. And as part of in the settlement agreement, Xcel agreed to increase the rebate levels for its ducted and ductless ASHPs from $600 for ducted and $300 for ductless up to $800 and $500 for ductless, in addition to a $100 contractor incentive. So we considered that a partial win from Eebc's original recommendation. And then Eebc also proposed 2 different pilot proposals. So all of those first 14 were all product specific measures. We also included 2 pilots in our recommendations and in our settlement negotiations with the company. And the first one, which was brought forth by Recurve, was a demand flexibility innovations marketplace pilot, and as a way to build an EEDR pilot pipeline. And then the other pilot concept was brought forth by Emporia Energy. And I know Patricia and Carmen both worked very hard in refining these proposals and getting them to the company. And we even met with the Office of Consumer Counsel to discuss demand response, because that was something they raised in their answer testimony. And we felt that with these pilots, we could get some buy-in from the OCC in these concepts. And so we brought forth these 2 different pilot proposals, and in the settlement negotiations, we had gotten public service with the buy-in from some of these other parties to implement a demand response working group that would start this year, and that will discuss various topics, but will also include discussion of challenges to the broader adoption of DR offerings and opportunities to enhance DR offerings to achieve a greater peak load reduction for all customer classes, including an integrated EEDR product concepts that were raised in the proceeding that focus on the residential class. And in the settlement agreement, it also states that the objective of this DR working group will be to examine the effectiveness of current products and determine the feasibility and benefits of launching 1 or more residential DR pilots in 2022. So the working group will be for this year, with the hopes of implementing a pilot in the final year of the plan in 2022. So that was a very exciting win for us to get the company to commit to this working group, which we will also expect to be actively a part of when that starts up, once the plan is implemented, and seeing if we can get these pilot concepts off the ground in the second part of the plan.
So any questions or comments from everybody on the phone or on the Zoom call? Thank you, Casey. Great job.
Is there a summary rebate incentive table that may have been put together as far as not only these initiatives that were done here, but everything under the DSM plan? Or is that something we have to get the final version of the DSM plan and cut and paste, pull things out of that?
I do believe in the settlement agreement that Xcel filed in support of the settlement agreement and the amended plan, that there was a rebates table That was a part of that filing, so it is a publicly filed document. So I think that we'd be happy to provide that or circulate that to the group. And it does have the, it shows the movement of the different rebates based on the negotiations, but it is a table of incentives that that you can review that for.
And Casey, is that the term sheet that we would be looking at each meeting, that Excel would be going through each one of the items?
I think it's a version of the term sheet, but I know that they have these two tables that both for the electric and the gas side, that was a part of the motion to approve the settlement agreement.
Okay, we'll look for that. I'm sorry, who was that
Thank you.
question? I couldn't
That was
see.
Robert.
Okay,
Robert.
okay. So the question before, oh, go ahead. Would somebody else have a question? Okay. Before we move on, because I know we're getting close on time, the question is, what do all the proposing companies here do next? And how do we work with Excel, especially since they were accepted or partially accepted? I don't know if Casey or Mark, you want to just give a quick answer on that, and then we'll move on to legislation, or we can follow up with that information.
I'm sorry, can you say that one more time, Patricia?
Yeah, Mark, I think the question that our members have who intervened and put proposals forth and got, a full acceptance or a partial, how do they follow up with Excel going forward? I know we, Eebc, we're going to reach out and say, how do you want to contact and work with the individuals who propose these to put together the program that goes into the marketplace? That was the first place we'd start. But I also know in the past, Excel's just reached out directly to the companies that have proposals that were accepted.
Yes, that is what I would expect. If it's a technology-based proposal where they've accepted a technology that we put forward, then I would expect Excel just to reach out to you directly. The ones where Excel has either pledged to work directly with Eebc, like in workforce training, or especially the pilot one that I know you and I and Carmen have discussed before, where steps are needed before Excel is supposed to do something or may be triggered to do something. Those are the ones where some more direct appeal is needed from Eebc to start getting the wheels turning in Excel that can turn very slowly and squeaky wheel gets oiled kind of thing. And what the schedule is going to be is that once the settlement is approved, which I fully expect it to be, because it's unopposed, that Excel, what they do is they produce, or what they're going to do is produce a red line, essentially a new version of the whole plan. And that is the one that will go to market as it will. And so they're going to start, they're already doing some behind the scenes work, I'm sure, but the plan doesn't really get going until it's approved. So you could look for implementation in Q2, and sometimes Excel likes that summertime cutover when in the past they've used like July 1 to pick a round number in the year. And then that's when these products all go into effect. And so when there are things that require Excel to do something, and then that is where we need to think about how much pressure we want to put on them and who we want to contact and what levers we pull. Do you ideally not rising to the level where you're having to use the council, right? Because it costs money and that kind of thing. And so to use those steps we have to initiate conversations, especially when there's these triggers of going to like the DSM roundtable, where you can have, you don't want to be learning things for the first time there. If you can, you want to be out ahead of it. We know your roundtable's coming. Let's talk about what's going to be in it. Try and get those down.
Great. Super helpful. So I'd like to, let's move forward. I know we're coming up in the hour and I don't know if Mary could give us another 10 minutes, but Black Hills, by the way, has their electric DSM performance update, and the meeting's on January 13th. And to RSVP to Patty from Black Hills, if you're interested in that, and I put the topics in there. Then we wanted to talk about what's on the docket, what's on the plan for 2021 Colorado legislative session, and included the call to action that the EBC had on the docket in 2020, except for COVID, kind of took over the legislative session. And so we're asking our members to participate by, testimony, calling legislators, technical data support that we might need to support SWEEP, who's bringing these bills to present to the legislators. Howard, does anybody want to comment and needs to jump off? Or, we are recording this as well, so. Otherwise, Howard, do you want to jump into it and give us an overview?
Yeah, I talked at the quarterly meeting about the 3 priority bills, so I won't repeat that. I wanted to note to everyone, some of you may be aware, there's been a big effort underway by the Policy Administration and the Colorado Energy Office, CO, to develop its greenhouse gas emissions reduction strategy, what they're calling the roadmap for meeting the goals in House Bill 1261. And there was a draft roadmap put out during the fall, and the final roadmap is coming out next week, probably Thursday of next week. So stay tuned for that. It will provide a lot of detail about the legislation that the administration is backing. And fortunately, all 3 priority bills that I've mentioned, building electrification, commercial building efficiency, and the gas DSM bill, those are all bills that the administration will be supporting. The roadmap will also lay out the kind of the schedule for rulemakings at the Air Quality Control Commission that will affect various initiatives around reducing emissions in the oil and gas sector and transportation. The building sector is kind of not, there isn't a lot at the Air Quality Control Commission that's at least teed up for now. It's going to affect the building sector. That's more of the legislation. In addition to the 3 bills, I listed the administration, the policy administration is going to get behind a sort of still to be defined bill that will complement these other bills that are basically emissions reduction standards for gas utilities. And so in order to meet the emissions reduction standards, the gas utilities are going to need to ramp up their efficiency programs, support beneficial electrification. The commercial buildings bill will help as well. It's the benchmarking and upgrade requirements for commercial buildings. But then other things like bringing renewable natural gas, biogas, into gas supply will also help. So it's kind of more of a top-down approach to reducing emissions from the building sector by adopting some targets or standards for reducing overall emissions from gas utilities. So that might be another bill that, assuming it materializes, that EEBC would want to look at and potentially support.
Thanks, Howard. Yeah, it's very, the relationship that the EBC has with SWEEP is super important in that SWEEP is moving all of those bills forward, and the EBC brings the business voice from, to the table. Like I'd mentioned before, everything from testimony to
Right.
support and those types of things. And so it's very critical that our businesses get involved so that we can bring those realities to the bills as well. Of
Yep.
it work better if this was changed based on, because we know all the technical pieces, and that falls within your group. So we'll have working groups and
Right.
pick those different pieces. And so we definitely, it's that thing where it's don't wait, do it now, because by the end it's too late, and it
Right.
affects business, for decades going forward. So
Howard, I've got 2 quick questions for you, hopefully quick. One, what does SWEEP stand on renewable natural gas as a concept? And number 2, this other bill about the methane standard has a lot of parts in it about solar thermal technology as well. Is SWEEP supporting that piece too? And is that a concern about the already shrinking gas budget in line with and the interplay with solar thermal and this idea of using the social cost of methane, which is sort of like an appendix to the social cost of carbon? And that bill is a little bit confusing to me, and I need some
Yes.
education on it. But those are my 2 questions.
Okay. Well, easy answer. Then the first one, SWEEP is not going to take a stand on renewable natural gas, just like we don't weigh in on like RPS legislation or other kind of supply side matters. So we'll leave that to others, the environmental groups, WRA and other environmental groups, NRDC, Sierra Club, have views about renewable natural gas. The second question is, you're asking about what I term the gas DSM bill that brings in social cost of carbon and social cost of methane and cost effectiveness analysis of gas DSM, and has some other provisions meant to bolster gas energy efficiency and DSM programs even further in the future. Excel, this is sort of moving us in the same direction that Excel has wanted to go, but maybe, instead of a 15 or 20% increase in the budget, we could be looking at 30, 40, 50% increases in the future. And yes, some of the support for this bill are the solar thermal folks. And if this bill passes, it's more likely that solar thermal passes cost effectiveness screening and it gets some rebates. I'm not too worried about that. I think that will be a small area in terms of the overall budget. They're not going to all of a sudden, take up $5 million a year in rebates for solar, space heating, or water heating systems. At least I don't think so. And hopefully the overall pie is growing and they're able to do more energy efficiency as well as start supporting solar thermal as a result of this bill. There's still somewhat modest, even at the $18.5 million level, that's better than the $12 million they used to spend. But, in Utah, the gas utility, which has fewer customers than XL Gas, for a long time has been spending $25 to $30 million a year on gas efficiency programs. So there's plenty of room to grow that area. But happy to, we can talk further offline about the details of that bill if you'd like, Mark.
Great, thanks.
By the way, the legislative session, they're going to meet for 3 days next week. It starts Wednesday. They're going to meet for 3 days and do some essential stuff like COVID related and clean up of some of the bills they did in the special session last year. And then adjourn for 5 weeks. And start, basically kind of start, I think it's like the 17th or 18th of February. So there's a delay. There'll be kind of a delay. You know, bills will not be introduced until they restart. But we have more time to shape up these bills and start to build support. And they're hoping that members of the legislature can get vaccinated and then they come back and don't have to worry about, you know, the members that refuse to wear masks in a closely packed room.
But I think the lobbyists are, you know, if anyone's down beneath the lawyers in the order of vaccines, it's got to be the lobbyists.
Yeah, some of the lobbyists are probably fretting a bit.
So does that mean then once it restarts on like the 17th or 18th of February, it'll be a full session for?
That's the hope. That's the plan. They can, you know, push everything back and go. Usually, I think the session normally ends in May, and so like, you know, ending it in June.
It's 120 days, and after COVID, they won the right to have that be any 120 days they choose. So they're gonna finish it. It may drag out the whole year if it has to.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Super helpful. That is all we had on the agenda. Anything else, Howard or Mark or Casey or Carmen, before we sign off?
No, just great job everyone on the wins, and we'll monitor the hearing and let you know when everything gets finalized.
And absolutely reach out if you have questions or you feel like we need a squeaky wheel in somewhere area, let us know. Absolutely.
We might mention, in case folks haven't heard, there's a new chair of the commission starting next week.
Yeah, okay.
And actually, I was just going to say congratulations, Howard, on your retirement.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks,
for all
Jim.
the work that you've done over the many years that I've been in business. And I think we've been working about the same time frame. But anyway, congratulations.
Thanks.
I'm jealous.
It's a partial retirement. I'm going to be a part-time consultant, probably consultant to SWEEP, and not looking for a huge amount of work, but I'm giving up the executive director position at SWEEP, and Miss Elise Jones is coming in as the next executive director. She's term limited, finishing 8 years as Boulder County Commissioner, elected official. Prior to that, she was the executive director of the Colorado Environmental Coalition for 13 years. So she has a lot of experience with organization leadership, and she's just a really passionate and articulate supporter of clean energy and sustainability. And so I think you will enjoy working with her.
Well, and Howard, you've been critical to our industry and a visionary, so we want to stay close wherever you go.
Sure. Post-COVID. Yes.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Especially if you go up skiing, I want to stay close.
Okay.
So, but the
Thank
new
you.
chair, yeah, of the commission you had mentioned.
Oh, yeah. So, Eric Blank was appointed by the governor to be the next chair of the commission. I think he starts next week. And Eric Blank has a long career in clean energy and renewable energy. Back in the 1990s, he was a predecessor of Western Resource Advocates, the Land and Water Fund of the Rockies. I think he was like lead lawyer for the energy program. And then he went into the private sector and has been a renewable energy developer for many years. But he's kept a hand in kind of policy and analysis, and but he's, you know, developed solar developer. But I'm sure he understands the importance of energy efficiency and demand response and how that complements renewables, and will be I would think, a strong supporter of everything that SWEEP and EBC is advocating.
Excellent. Great. It's going to be a fun year. There's going to be fun.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Mark, do you know Eric?
Yes, I know him through, he's been a member of the Colorado Independent Energy Association in his role as a developer.
Yeah.
And so I don't know him super well, but I do know him.
Yep. Good. Yeah, super thoughtful guy. Okay.
all right. Well, thank you, everyone. Appreciate everyone's good insight and the review. And we'll be setting up another policy action committee meeting when we have a little bit more information, and putting the action items in place for all the pieces we have here going forward. And if you have, and please remember to look for your survey link and give us some feedback on what you'd like to see and in this next year, and any other things that you'd like to comment on. Super appreciate it. Thank you so much, and have a fabulous rest of the week.
Thank you, Patricia.
Absolutely. Take care.
Everyone. Bye.
Thanks, Patricia.